You sound like you already know this a little bit, but most dentists don't. And so this is my journey, is to get the true implementation of this. And where I learned it was when I was with ZIMMER Biomet. We had thousands of these navigator kits out that looked just like this, $12,000 for a navigator kit. It's very expensive.
It's very expensive.
And because they buy a lot of implants from us, oftentimes they were given these, and they were just sitting. Nobody knew how to use them until I developed this protocol report. It was like an overnight awakening. Everybody was so excited, and they loved using their navigator kits, and we started selling more of them again. We had a 5-year hiatus there where they didn't sell one. And once I put this out, the salespeople understood it. They talked to their clinicians. We sold hundreds of kits. So I think that protocol report is so very important. And these are things we work hard to make sure we provide the tools for you that you implement the product.
For sure.
If you look at all my emails, my logo at the bottom is technology creates great opportunities. Implementation produces results. So it doesn't matter how sweet it is. If we don't get around to turning it on, it's of no value, is it? So my whole life has been working on making sure that anything that I touch, we implement it successfully. So that's our goal. And I think it's Kelvin's goal too here at this lab. They're incredible.
Oh, absolutely. I love working with them. I love how approachable they are.
One more person to come in and
you can go now because I gave you my whole seminar. Okay,
thank you very much.
Alright, Craig, let's start with the show in like 5 minutes.
Sounds good. Are you a general dentist or specialist?
Yes, I am.
General.
I did a fellowship at NYU for implant.
So you go to the hotshot schools.
Yes.
I'm just a humble Creighton graduate. Now, when did you graduate?
So I went to down school at Columbia, but I did my implant fellowship at NYU.
Okay.
So
you do a lot of implants.
we do, yes.
So you understand what I'm talking about. You understand, you work with enough home beams, you understand the three-dimensional relationship.
Oh, it totally, like, it changed the way I used to think. My first surgical guide that I used was in 2014. When Dentistry.
Anybody want to see
Dentistry
the door over there?
And you're probably famous with so many specialists that I talk to, whether it's maxillofacial, whether it's a periodontist, prosthodontist, or a trained specialist. They used to call them tissue punches because we didn't know how to align the two. So the reliability was very iffy.
True.
And so they started calling them tissue punches. So many specialists like, oh, Craig, yeah, I've been down there. Well, they're nothing but a glorified tissue punch. I said, and I've changed a lot, but again, you have to reestablish confidence in the product.
Yeah. But you made a very good point that the cost effectiveness wasn't there initially.
$600-700 for it.
Yes, that's what.
Now $150 to $250.
Yeah.
You have someone else do it. If you do it yourself, if you can be down to $8 to $9.
$500-600. Simplant. I was trained on Simplant.
Well, I talk about Implant Studio, and Implant Studio is great, but Simplant is the foundation of success for guidance surgery.
Sure.
Simplant's still the resident software on Anatomage and on a lot of the home beams, and it's a phenomenal software. When they start getting bought up, though, then they start becoming proprietary, and they don't keep up their libraries the way they should. And failed libraries makes the system basically worthless. So we don't have all the libraries, and they're truly fully guided. People don't understand that aspect either. Now, I can guide you in it, but if I don't know where to place it, it's of no value, is it? But Simplant was a phenomenal software.
It was, yes.
And still is.
I had stopped using it, but
Everybody has stopped using it because it kind of lost its way. And
I think
Implant Studio took over with the opportunity and did a very successful job.
they have to work with the flow, and they can't be that so stubborn about their ways.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here, okay? I'm Craig Martin. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more and brag here in a few minutes. But would you all be comfortable if I take my mask off, or does anybody have a problem with me taking it off? This is a real troubled time, guys. I'm from Wisconsin, and if you wear a mask up in Wisconsin, you could get stoned. They're so individual rights and anti this that it just appalls me that what we've got going on in our country, that they don't have common sense to protect me from them. That mask really protects me from you, because what comes out of your mouth is more dangerous than what I'm taking into that mask. So I wear it to protect the people around me. They don't get that in Wisconsin. But I still wear it and don't criticize me. So if anybody does feel uncomfortable, I'll be happy to put it back on. Today we're going to talk about guided surgery, and we partnered with 3DI, and it's called DentiqGuide. Now, as we're talking, if you have questions about anything that relates to graphic arts and digital dentistry, I can get off on tangents, but we're going to try to stay focused here, because my whole love is, and I'll show you in just a second why, but we're in a whole digital circle now, from intraoral scanners and cone beams to the final product that we create for the patient, no matter what it is, probably touch the digital world, and they have been completely created by the digital world. Okay. I'm the presenter. My basic responsibilities, I partnered with, and am now a newbie for CREODENT, and I've been with them for about 3 days, actually for about a month to 2 months. But Kelvin and I go back 8 years. Because prior to that, you can see I was a digital specialist for mostly the West Coast, but from a development standpoint for all the United States for ZIMMER Biomet, who's a significant implant company. And Kelvin and I met 8 years ago when I was with them. And the reason I have so much respect for Kelvin and his company, and why I worked hard to get them to notice me enough that we work together now, is that I've never seen a company that is more digitally inclined, and still quality is their first goal, and predictable outcomes. And so we worked on some projects that actually kind of went past ZIMMER Biomet. So we actually advanced ZIMMER Biomet's journey in the digital world through our efforts. So I have a lot of respect for them and a lot of respect for the company.
Thank you, Greg.
I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. But as much as ZIMMER Biomet, when ZIMMER Biomet hired me, they had me learn 3Shape. Is anybody familiar with 3Shape software? 3Shape software is basically the standard of the industry. Very expensive, licensing is very expensive, but it's still kind of the standard of the industry for labs and for dentists. I was one of only 4 people in the United States that ever got certified as a certified trainer for 3Shape. So even though I worked for ZIMMER Biomet, my entire time with them for 8 years was working on 3Shape with labs and with dentists. So I will brag about my knowledge base of whether I'm helping you design a custom abutment, a crown. Partials look like erector sets, but I still know the functionality of how to do a partial. When it comes to Implant Studio, I've probably done close to 1,000 cases that actually went into the mouth. But I did it through labs, so I would teach labs how to use the software. And in teaching the labs how to use the software, they were doing cases for clinicians. And so oftentimes I got to work with a clinician, which brought me back to having fun again, because I am a dentist. I'm a dentist at heart. I was a very successful dentist in standards, whether it's published in magazines, or whether it's fast, or whether it's productive, or whether you're so arrogant and infallible that you have car accidents and have to have discs removed from your neck and give up dentistry in 6 months' time. I'm not drunk, I just have a little balance problem. That's why you'll see me always hold on to something. So my passion for dentistry has been intense all my life, even in the fact that I was born to a dentist his freshman year of dental school at Creighton. So my whole life, for better or worse, has been dentistry. But the digital aspect of it, I really gained the drive and love for that when I worked for Patterson Dental. I was Patterson's general manager of their largest branch in the world in Chicago for years. And I sold the very first 2 CERECs ever sold. So I do get bragging rights of being more digital than anybody in the world, maybe. And I followed it closely in all directions, through the lab, through the dentist, through the specialist, and through my own interests and love. I also wrote a software program that has been used by universities. Lowland University has been using it for 23 years now. National Dental and several dental supply companies use it. And about 6,000 dentists have it. And it's boring stuff, it's called just swipe, but it's inventory management. But again, it delved me into the digital world, it delved me into computers, into databases, into the whole works. And a lot of what we have structured here are database related and graphics related. So when we, and I graduated on, wait, you can tell I didn't graduate just yesterday, right? So I've been around for a while. And that's much to say about it. But again, if you're not familiar with CREODENT does everything. And they do it with a very high conscientious level. So they have their own aftermarket products that are truly, because of the mills they use, are truly equal in quality now to your OEM products. So we're seeing in the last 3 years, there's 2 or 3 companies that are finally milling to the same standards and quality of your actual manufacturers of some of these implants. So they've got a very, very strong following on all levels. They're also as advanced in the digital and printing aspect, so they have all the carbon printers, which are the high-end printers. So I have a lot of respect for them and have for a long time. They're truly digitally streamlined from the intraoral scanner on down. You know, 3 years ago, and I worked with probably close to 1,000 labs over the last year, 8 years. 3 years ago, there was probably about 15% intraoral scanning coming into the labs, and about 85% was traditional impression. Today, CREODENT's about 65% intraoral scanners and 35% traditional. I've been in some labs that are as high as 80% intraoral scanning. So we are seeing, because of ease of use and ease of learning and comfort levels, that the intraoral scanning and the digital transmission of stuff growing at a very, very rapid rate. Dentique, I like this software a lot, and nobody has got me to ever waver from Implant Studio. You know, Blue Sky Bob, it's okay. Co-diagnostics, it's good software, but it's not necessarily easy to learn. So I have to have something that meets to my little mentality, and I can learn it easy and I can teach it easy. It doesn't matter how easy or hard it is for me to learn it. If I can't teach it to somebody easy, it becomes a non-functional product. This is a very, as we go through a case today, and that's what the whole day is going to be, it's just the whole hour, is going through a case so you can see how friendly software can be to you if you do want to get into designing your own. But Dentique has another component. They have a design component. They have several components that we're going to be implementing here in the United States. But their Dentique link is nice because if you decide to have me design it for you, and you maybe want to print it, or you want to design it and maybe have me print it, the flow between Dentique link once we're set up is you can look at the case, you can rotate it around. Which is important because when I do a guide for you and I send you a surgical report, it's flat. You only get to see a certain perspective of the case, and I have to have you sign off on that because all I am is your technician. I don't care how many of these I've done, I'm still just your technician. And you have to sign off on it. With us being able to rotate it, or you rotating on your own time, you don't have to worry about coordinating with me. This is a really powerful tool that I like a lot. And so they are advanced in several ways, a little bit better than any of the other connections that I've seen from companies. I'm not a big one for pictures. I did center this one out here, having a 3D viewer and pointing, and again, that's the adjustments that we can make with the Dentique link. I think that's very, very significant. We're going to talk about guided surgery today. Put my mask on here for a second. How many of you do guided? How many of you do implants? These two cases I'm going to send around. are on sawdust models. So I get exposed to a lot of general dentist now, which is fun for me because that's what I am. And in doing so, I will show them and we will do a guided case. And when they see and understand a guided case, and they can do it on a sawdust model where they actually use each one of the drills and then place the implant, they start getting more confident and doing the onesies and twosies and threesies. And if you're going to get into implants, you definitely want to start with the onesies and twosies and threesies. You don't want to do a full arch reconstruction for your first case. One of the reasons I started getting involved with, and those are guide reports. We'll talk about those a little bit more too as we go along. But one of the reasons I got involved in this with the general dentist is I remembered in my own practice, and I saw cases that were mistakes, and oftentimes they were perforating the cortical plate on the facial or the cortical plate on the lingual, which is no, we don't want that to happen with our first case. But when I look, and I consider myself a relatively decent student, but when I look at a panoramic unit, it's flat, isn't it? When I look at a cone beam, it's three-dimensional. And it amazed me when I started palpitating when you go along the lingual ridge, the lingual face, and you get back to the bicuspid area on the mandibular, the jaw constricts in. It doesn't just stay flat. And sometimes we don't think of that when we're looking down in a bloody saliva-filled field. So this is when I realized for myself there was no way I would ever attempt on a semi-regular basis doing an implant without a guide. Okay, I'm going to sit down for the rest of this. Take my mask off again, so you can see if I'm nervous or comfortable. Okay, a couple things. There's the guide we're talking about. There's a typical kit that we talk about. So there's a surgical kit. There's a lot of pieces in this. And so even though we can logically talk about these and say, well, I understand that, when you have 4 implants, or if you don't have a good guide report like we're sending around now, it becomes awkward to do it. You spend too much time trying to think of what the next instrument is. And that's what the typical surgical report looks like. This one would be for 4 implants, and it tells each instrument right straight on down in the sequence. And I'm just looking at that kit, find that one, put it in the drill, and I'm confident because I've given you a full, what we call a fully guided formula for the case. Here's the big thing with guided cases. You see that you see the sleeve, the shelf on each of these. All you have to do is put that next instrument in, follow the drill speed recommendations and good irrigation, and it goes to the exact length of where you want your implant to be. So with good, fully guided surgery, we have these collars on every instrument. The only one you don't see it on is the tissue punch, because the tissue punch is designed to just go through tissue, and you don't know exactly what the depth of the tissue is. So we don't put a collar on the tissue punch. Everything else, we want a collar on it because we want to go to a certain depth. Okay, you can see I'm not a big one on the slides. I like good functionality. Okay, so these are a couple guided cases I've done. We're going to do one from scratch, and we're going to do one for the toughest teeth to do, number 8 and 9. And we're going to do temporary, we're going to do a medium provisionals on it too. So we're going to show the full power of the software. So we're going to do a new case here. Everything is very logically structured. It's telling me that I have to tell what teeth I'm going to do. I'm going to do a crown. Now this crown is not my temporary provisional. This crown is a virtual crown so that I have something to relate to where that incisal edge is when I'm putting the implant in. I do this on every case I ever do, whether I'm doing medium provisionals or not. I think it's critical. And a lot of people bypass this, say, I got an idea where it's at. I don't want an idea. Any of my technicians that I ever teach, I put a lot of focus on this part. And then we're going to tell if we want to virtually plan the implant. So I could do a virtual report, just getting an idea where the implant is without doing a guide. But I'm for guides, so we're gonna do a guide too. But we're also gonna do an immediate provisional on this one. So it's just a matter of clicking those buttons. So we did that, that's the case setup. The next thing we have to do is we gotta get the digital data. So we just follow the next button. We need to get the cone beam. And we are doing number 89, and here's my cone beam. Oftentimes organizing data is the biggest thing. So all you would have done in this case is you would have sent me your cone beam, and you would have sent me your intraoral scan. And I have them sitting here on my computer ready to go. And so I go in to my scans and my cone beam, and here's my cone beam. Cone beams, if you send them to me the right way, and anybody that works with me, I have manuals that explain all of this. So sometimes, especially with your Simplant, with your enamel, some of the cone beams you have, it defaults to where you put it on a disc, and it's in the viewing mode, and the resolution's phenomenal. But that doesn't work to get it over to almost any of the softwares. You have to send it as a file format in a DCL with the extension in high resolution. And if you don't know that, I can always follow through any cone beam and help your staff go to where they need to learn how to save it, to send it the correct way. And this is like 275 little slices that it's sending over. And all you have to do is double click on the top one. It doesn't matter whether it's Implant, whether it's Implant Studio, or whether it's Dentiq. You just double click on the top one. Somebody says, you know, I double clicked on the second one. It probably works, but why do I just always click on the top one. I'd hate to find out a year from now, brought in everything except the top one. So now we have our first view of our cone beam. This is a good one because this is an actual surgeon that I did this for in Los Angeles. And I kept telling myself, when you do your cone beam, you have to put a bite opener in there of about 4 or 5 millimeters, because if it overlaps, you make it very difficult for me to find marks to make sure I align them correctly. And the risk is on you then, not on me. He's Craig, I forgot, I had him bite down. So he sent about every other one, he still sends me this way, and I still say, fine, let's try it and see what happens. You can see this one has a lot of scatter. You've got braces. So this is kind of like the nastiest cone beam I can get. So I want this to be real life stuff for us. So now we're going to bring in the scan. Let's back up here and find my scans. Now this scan will look a little funky to you because it came to me in a DCM format, which may or may not mean anything to you guys, but these are all things that I work with my clients on, is that Trios, if you have a Trios and you do an intraoral scan, it by nature sends it in a DCM extension. But a lot of softwares won't accept DCM extensions. They will only accept STL. In this case, the case I like is in DCM, so I had to go in a special way and convert it to an STL. But every scan, every intraoral scanner out there now, iTero, Trios, Meta, all have the ability to save in an STL format. And again, these are things that I walk you through at one time, and you may forget it. Second time, you never forget it. So, because I won't do it third time. Okay. So we're going to do, this is maxillary we're doing. Oftentimes I want to bring in the opposing, in this case for speed and everything. The only reason I'm getting this error message is because I said it's a funky scan, and you'll see in just a second what I'm talking about. So to get this one in, you see all the ripples on the bottom. I had to kind of nurse it in, but it works fine, so it serves our purpose well. And it's, like I say, these are the nastiest ones to do to beat that incisive ledge with the implant. So we've got our two components in there now. We've got our cone beam, and we've got our intraoral scan. And that's all I need. That's all you need to run the software. So then the next thing we have to do is we have to crop it a little bit. So we've got a beautiful cone beam here, but do I really need to see the spine? No. So I'm going to drag that in. And you can see here that as I drag, it's going to shrink this down too. So I'm gonna bring in the lateral because I don't want, I want to get rid of as much chatter as I can. And there are systems, including this one, that they are learning to dissolve the scatter. But I've learned to work so good with it. The scatter really, if I couldn't work with it, their scatter reduction isn't gonna get enough gone either. So you'll see that it's pretty easy to work with the scatter now. We're doing a maxillary, so it's always fun to see all the different components, but I'm gonna still follow the disciplines I do, and the less data that I have in there, the faster the processor works, and everything works out better. So we're gonna do that. We don't need just a little bit of the lip there, maxillary. So now you can see this is one of the things that I like better than Implant Studio. So a lot of stuff, almost everything I like is good on this as I do Implant Studio, but there are certain things I like better because I'm still a layman by nature. I'm not in the mouth anymore. And so I view things as the specialist, you guys down here, and I view the layman. But even as a specialist, sometimes that layman view is a more comfortable view for you to take a quick look at too. And in this case, it's nice because I see exactly here what I'm pulling in. Okay, so the next thing is we need to do the alignment. And this is changed in the new software. They bring in what we're talking about, the panoramic curve should be brought in before this, but it works both ways, so it's not a big deal. The alignment, to me, is the most failed part. We talked about tissue punches earlier on. When you had to use even Simplant, trying to line up these two with the inferior intraoral scans we got, the marginal cone beams we got, was a nightmare. If I'm off 1 degree, you can be assured I'm off 4 to 5 degrees at the apex. And if I'm off 4 to 5 degrees medial or distal, I could be going into the neighboring tooth and not even know it. Because once I line it, it tells me everything's cool. But if it's offline, it's not. So this to me is literally the most important part of the process. Now, I'm gonna apologize right off the bat because of time. I may not get this line perfect. Because it is a tough case, you can see here. That I've got my work cut out for me. I can lock these together and unlock them at any time, so now they'll both rotate together. And now I have to do a 3-dot alignment. So here's where we talk about the scatter. See how quickly I can get rid of the scatter? Now I lost a lot of teeth up front, but I got a nice mark here, don't I, from my molar. And you want as big of a triangulation as you can get for the alignment. So now I'm gonna come, and God, I'd really love to be able to get that lateral, but it's gone, isn't it? I got it. Now this is not functional back here, but look at how nice my lateral comes in. So you see how these new tools they give us takes a lot of the chatter control and puts it in our hands without having to go in and try to erase that stuff like some of them do. That is mind-boggling to me. I could never do it. So we're gonna pick this point right here. Then we're gonna come over here. And even though I can get rid of the chatter back here, I'm just not sure when I see this smooth across here and I see cusps here, I don't like it. So I'm not going to go that far in the triangulation. I'm going to come back up here to my cuspid, which looks real good to me. Everybody concur? What movie is that? They always talk about, you concur? Okay. This, a lot of people work from the color code. I don't waste my time with it. It just doesn't have that much meaning to me. Here's what my manual alignment tells me the whole story right here. Now you can see, as I do this, you can see the plane. I'm rotating on this first window over here, and you can see it go up and down. As you do, you can see how nice my intraoral scan outlines my cone beam. So, and now I'm going right out to the incisal edges, and you can see that's really sweet. That looks really good. I'm kind of proud of myself this morning. But that's just a start. that doesn't tell me everything I need to know. So this one does distal buccal. This is equally as important because now I'm getting both sides at the same time. And you can see that it looks pretty nice over all of these. And then I'll also do the lateral. And so all of these look real good to me. I like my lineup. So now I'm going to move on to placing remember, the virtual placement now, not the immediate provisional, but the virtual placement. And here, let's say that we had a root tip, and or we knew that this tooth was going to come out, and we're going to place an implant. I can extract that tooth, and it really does a nice job for me. And if I'm going to make a model, I have to extract the tooth, or else if I place the implant, that tooth's going to be there, and my guide is not going to work. So even though you say, yeah, but I know where the implant's going to go. No, you got to get rid of the tooth, or that tooth will, the guide will go over the tooth that you're going to extract. So you want to get rid of that tooth. It's real easy to do. You just hit the plus, draw the dots on it, it's gone. But we don't need to for this case. So now we're going to go into a virtual placement. Now they have multiple tooth libraries that you can pick, because what I do design here is going to carry forward into my immediate provisionals. So however I design here, if I have it close enough, I don't need to do anything. When I get into immediate provisionals, I have additional time and options to do more design work than that. And this is where I get to probably say, remember, I'm just a dentist, not a technician. Usually I say I'm just a technician, not a dentist, but when I'm doing something and I'm doing a medium job on it, I quickly remind them I'm a dentist, not a technician. So I have an outlet for everything I do. So all this seems pretty logical so far. Again, for demonstration purposes, we're just going to leave them there, but you get an idea. It wouldn't take too long to get those spot on where I'm looking, but for this, this would be adequate. Okay, now the next one. This becomes equally critical. So we're doing now what's called drawing the curve, the parametric curve. So this brings back my panoramic view and all my views. So I want to get this to where I see the roots. And we'll make this larger for a minute here. So now you see I'm going right down the center of the canals on each of these, and that's my ideal spot for my panoramic curve. So as I do this, you see the other ones starting to develop now. So now you can see a good view from multiple views of what we're working with here. You can see we have good definition of our sinuses, we have good definition of neighboring teeth, and now I'm starting to feel confident about placing that implant. So
So now we're ready to place our implants. And we just pick the tooth we're going to place the implant on, and we pick the implant type. And in this case, we're going to pick Dentiste, and we're going to pick this one. Now, the minute I pick the one I want, it brings up, and the reason I pick this is a 3, so I would need to go with a narrow gauge to get it. But I want some length to it, so we're going to pick. Here you can see it's a 3 in diameter and it's a 12 millimeter. So let's see if we can get a 12 millimeter in there. And then I'll also pick the guide tooth now. And I'm going to pick this guide tooth. Right now it's set to an offset of 8 millimeters. If you look at the sheet, yes.
What is that offset?
Okay. The offset, I'm going to send another sheet around now to show you how complex, I don't want this to scare you away, but how complex the offset can get. And you don't need to understand this. You have to understand that I have the confidence in understanding this, because it's what makes what we call truly fully guided. And that offset, my drill, when that, remember where I showed you the sleeve and that sleeve stopped? When that stops, it has to get through the tissue, through the bone, and down to the tip of my 11.5 millimeter implant. So the offset is from the top of the guide tube to the top of the implant. Everybody says you have to know the depth of tissue. Who the heck knows the depth of tissue? I've never understood that. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I get to the tip of the implant. And from the top of the guide tube to the top of the implant is all I care about, and that's the offset.
Oh, okay.
So that plus the implant should be the length of your drill. Okay?
Plus the implant.
So right here is from here, and you can see the line there. If you look at here on the screen, right from there to the top of that implant is the offset.
Got it.
And that would be 8 millimeters in this case.
Okay.
Okay? And then we have the length of the implant.
Uh-huh.
And that should be our drill length until you get to somebody like Zimmer. And the reason is, if you've ever used a Zimmer, or maybe some of your own guided surgery, they have what are called guide tube handles.
Yeah.
And that handle has to go into your surgical guide. That's 1 millimeter in height. So that adds another millimeter. Zimmers, you have to understand, and it's a good concept, but their drill has to go 1.25 millimeters deeper than the implant. And the reason is that they want that implant to seat positively. So it's like drilling a well. It's a nipple, it's an auger. So you have to add a millimeter on the bottom and a millimeter on top. So if you look at the examples I give you there, this is what I did. All of this, documented it and proved it, because it confused 3Shape, it confused Zimmer for 6 months, and they all finally agreed, and we've never had a problem with a case since we understood this. So you'll see any guide 2 report, any drill report that comes out, it's going to come out 23 millimeters, because it's only measuring from the top of the guide tube to the bottom of the implant. And if I'm using a 25 millimeter drill, I have to make sure that only comes out to 23, because I still have to put that guide tube on top and the top to the bottom. If I didn't, then you'd be going down an extra millimeter deeper than you think you were. So these are all the things that are my responsibility, my work, but I have to explain it to you so you understand that I understand it and have the confidence in doing your guide with it. Okay, so we're going to hit that to apply, and that automatically initially positions it for me. And we have 3 views here that we want to look at. And this view is showing us from the top down. It's actually one of the most important views when you're doing multiple placements. This view is the view that I work from most, is the cross-sectional. And so now I'm going to bring it in here. And here's where we get right off the bat. into the issue of alignment. And these are things that I work with all of you, because a lot of clinicians want me to have it just at at the apex of the cortical plate, just at the very occlusal point here. But more and more, because a lot of times you have a sharp ridge, they want to go in, even if it's just on a single one, they want to plane that a little bit. So they say, no, Craig, put it down 1.5 millimeters for me so I can plane that a little bit. These are all decisions that, if you're doing your own software, you make those decisions right there. If I'm doing it for you as your technician, I have to understand each of you individually as to what your preferences are on that. Some people don't like encroaching on, especially an X-ray, on the cortical plate bone on the facial. I don't for the incisal half, but the other half, the cortical plate gets a little bit stronger on an X-ray. So if I'm going to try to get a little bit of stability from that, I don't mind seeing my implant get a little bit closer to the cortical plate the farther up I go. You'll notice this smooth tube here is critical. That's the safety zone. This is the actual implant here. That's the safety zone. So I'm 1.5 millimeters away from the cortical plate bone. I'm 2 millimeters here. So the apical is 2 millimeter safety zone. The lateral is 1.5. I can encroach on it. I can come in here and tell it I want to overpower the safety zone and change it. Anterior, sometimes I'll have clinicians that say, well, let's go down to 1.25, because if I have that, I'm trying to get 2 centrals in there, I just need a little bit more room, and I'm fine with that. That's your decision, not mine. And so when we do it, everything comes up with warnings that you have violated the safety zone, and I need your approval on that. So now we've beat that incisal edge, haven't we? So we have that view, we have this view here, which is lateral. I'm well safe, so I could actually come over here just a little bit more. I have to also watch my guide tube, and in this case, I'm going to see if I can activate my guide tube. Oops. So you can see the guide tube is set at 8 millimeters. This guide tube I can slide to multiple ones, but I have to make sure when I'm doing that it is truly set to fully guided. So like with the ZIMMER Biomet, they have 4 different drill lines, so I could have 4 different sets for that guide tube, but it better be set to matching up to that drill, or you'll have problems. So when it's free flowing and you set it wherever you want, you better understand the sheet I gave you, or you'll have problems. And I won't ever work with those, because I'm scared I'll get distracted and set it to 8.25 instead of 8. So if it isn't fully guided, I won't even play with it. It's got to be fully guided for me. So we're going to set it, and in this case, I don't know, because I don't have these people's drills, so I don't know if it's fully, but we're going to pretend like I do, that we have the drill kit, and we're going to set it to where we're beating the tissue. So that would be a little higher than I want. We're definitely above the tissue there, and so that looks pretty good to me. But again, I still like my layman's view, so I can also take a look at these from this view here too. And I can minimize things that I don't want in the way. So now I can see my implant from, again, what I call my layman's view. I can get rid of, so now I get a real good view where I'm at in the neighboring tooth and everything. Do we all feel comfortable with that spot? Leave it there for demonstration purposes, or do you want me to move it? So I can move it from this view too. So they've really taken into account all of my graphical arts, ease of use, but still maintaining discipline in the process. Okay, let's go ahead and place our other one. And we're going to use the exact same one again. And you can see that I'm well safe away from the sinus here. So I feel good with that one, so I'm going to use it for the other one too. And now it goes in and finds the spot that I placed there and does an approximator. We're gonna cut. If I overlap, it will turn red and it won't let me move forward. So, place this one. I can also rotate these in any view that I'm in 360 degrees. And it will show me, so if I want to get back to my zero. You can see both of them are rotating. So this is a typical view that you're looking for is here. So again, let's take a look at this one and see if we're beating the insides of the edge. I guess I probably better bring my components back in so I can. No. That was an oops. I'm only allowed 3 oopses per seminar. If I do a 4th oops, I just get up and walk out the door and pretend like I wasn't even there. Totally screwed up my vertical plate here. I can also align both of those. So with this, tool, I can tell it to align them both, and it will put them in perfect alignment. I wouldn't do that with 2 centrals like this, because I'm so worried about that vertical plate moment. So we're going to leave it now, whether I mess things up or not, we're going to just leave it so we can move forward. But if I'm doing a 3D bridge, by all means, that becomes a very valuable tool to be able to do the alignment of the implants. So we can get this to where we can get much closer to doing true screw retained bridges and stuff like that too. Can you all hear me okay? Am I speaking loud enough? Okay. So for demonstration purposes, are we okay with where I place the implants, and do you understand? Does it all still seem pretty logical to you, straightforward? The quality of the screens on all what we're doing here, I feel really good, because again, this wasn't the best home beam, but I still have pretty darn good resolution of that home beam for my placement. So I feel very confident about each stage that I'm going through here. Now the part that scares people most is always the most fun for me to do, because creating a guide is like nothing. It's like drawing a dotted line, and you got your guide. It's already got your thickness set, and if you don't like that one, the next one you can adjust that thickness. You can see that I've got an awful lot of undercut there, but it didn't pick a real good job of my index. So I'm going to go ahead and just set the view. Now you can see I've got very little undercut, and I can work very nice with that. So the next thing I do is I tell it I want to do the guide. I have always, and nobody's ever complained, I cover a lot of stuff. Especially if I have free floating on the distal. I've got 2 implants back there, and there's no tooth borne behind it. Well, I tell you what, I don't want any wobbling. I don't want to be frustrated. So I'll always cover the curvature, and usually at least 2 teeth past the curve, so that I have good stability. And if someone sends me a half arch, I usually won't do it for them. Because if I don't have curvature coming around here on your cone beam and curvature on your internal stand, I'm not necessarily doing you a service, because remember what I talked about that alignment? That alignment becomes 10 times more difficult if I'm working on a straight half arch flat plane. To give you total reliability that I got that lined up just perfect. And only being 1 or 2 degrees off, I can create failure for you. Plus, I like to show off. So. The other reason I do a lot of teeth is because if I have too many teeth on there for you, you can take this and cut it a little shorter if you want. If I'm too short and it's wobbling, you're going to remember me, aren't you? And then we just tell it to apply. And there's my guide. So a couple other things, because these things get real hot when they're printed, I always put it in what I call a manufacturing bar. And what this does is it helps dissipate the heat and protect from warpage. They still do these when they print partials because of the plastics and stuff. It doesn't take much to create warpage, so I like to avoid warpage if at all possible. And so these little manufacturing bars work nice. But as a byproduct, most of the clinicians I did them for, when we'd send them to them, I'd tell them just go ahead and cut them off. They like them on the maxillary because it's a finger rest for them. On the mandibular, it's finger rest, but the tongue thrusting, you just can't have it in your wrist, so you have to cut it off on the mandibular. But they work it very nice as a finger rest for the maxillary. Then the next thing I do are windows, because everybody likes to have a seating window. Again, this software does a real nice, fast job. Some of the softwares do kind of round ones, which I don't like. I like the square windows. I think that there are several things I do them with. They work nicer. You can make any length, any size you want. Do remember as you're making windows though, you are also jeopardizing the structure. So if I make too much of a window, I may want to draw this, and I can just click on this, draw the line down, and create a little bit more body there. Or I may want to put a stabilizing bar across there. So you always want to keep that in mind as you do that. One thing I started doing, and sometimes get credit for it, is anybody grew up on a farm? Anybody been on a farm? Anybody ever been pheasant hunting? Anybody know what the word sluway means? The sluway is, it's a trust. So farmers plant cornfields, and I grew up in a farming community and actually lived on a farm for a little bit. In between the cornfields, if they're too big, they put just kind of brome grass, and that's a sluway, so that the water drains into that brome grass. Well, we as pheasant hunters loved it because that's where the pheasants hang out when they weren't eating corn. So you can walk sluways, kick up a lot of pheasants. I couldn't think of a better word for this, so I started calling it. Everybody laughed at it, they got it, so I still call it a sluway. Once I started doing this, there isn't anybody I design cases for that, I mean, they literally insist on having these in there. And the reason I did that is because I heard so many clinicians complaining that when they use guides, because of if they flush the way they're supposed to, and everybody does, cause a lot of pressure and will push up on the guide. Sluway becomes the perfect for the debris to flow out. The minute I started putting this, we got no back pressure. They absolutely love them. And it also kind of works as a seating so that they get a better feel that everything's seated. So they literally won't let me do them without putting a sluway in for each tube. And that's all there is to it. We can put a label on it if we want, but we're not going to spend any time on that today. And now we're going to do our templates. So the first thing, and if you notice, everything was step by step right across the top here, wasn't it? I don't need any wizard. I don't like wizards because sometimes they leave steps out and then I get confused. This, you just follow each step right across. And now we're doing our temporary, so we're doing the temporary crowns. And now we're going to do the margin line. So when I put these in, I put an analog in there. So in our case, we would be putting the CREODENT tie bases in there, or possibly a temporary cylinder. Once we put that in, it's asking me to do the margin line now. This is so sweet. Let's see if I get the right one. So there's the two abutments that I put in, the two, let's call them tie bases for now, but these are stock abutments. And you can see it's put the margin line around them. So it automatically does a very good job of finding the margin line. If it didn't, I can go dot, dot, dot around and find the margin line. So once I've got my margin lines in there, now it's going to go ahead and process it that those margin lines were in there. And now I just put the cement gap in there. So I've turned it, my wife loves it. I call it blue. She says, you really are colorblind, aren't you? It's about only 16 shades. So if I say blue and it's purple or don't, yeah, go ahead and laugh at me. I'm terrible with colors. Anyhow, it's a different color, isn't it? And I can set all these different settings for my cement gap. So if you feel you need a little bit more, you want a little bit snugger, you've got control of that. So once I've set my cement gap, now it's crown generation. So there's the very crowns I designed before, isn't it? But I've got tools here that I can continue to tweak these if I want. And I can see them there. So you can see they're not done yet. There's the margin line I made, there's my abutment, and here's the crowns I put in. Now the minute I tell it that I want those two to marry together, I just click generation and there marries them together. So now I have my temporary crowns ready to print. Just that fast, just that easy. There is no software in the industry that does this. If I use 3Shape, which you know I love, I have to go from Implant Studio, I have to complete the case, I have to take the XYZ model and bring it into 3Shape, which would be about $15,000 extra for you if you wanted to use both softwares. They have it right in here. This really takes the next level of, do I want more and more dentists to do their own designing? This is a really convenient tool for you to be able to design and print your guide and print your temporary crowns all at the same time and have them ready to go. And you can do this with engaging. If you're a little bit nervous about whether you're going to get the exact fit you wanted, you can go with non-engaging. And again, we talked about if you're doing an immediate temporary, and they say, well, yeah, but engaging is a lot tighter. For 4 months, maybe non-engaging isn't so bad because they shouldn't be putting that much pressure on the temporary anyhow. That I don't know that I want it to be that solid. So you've got both options though, with that we can do it with an engaging or we can do it with a non-engaging. And then even I have a last minute here where I can smooth it off. I can do several tools to finish these up even nicer. Then I have to confirm it. I always forget this stuff. That doesn't count as a vote, so. So now I've confirmed everything. Then I go ahead and say, yes, I'm approving everything. And then I can get out my surgical report. And this is where, with Dental Link, you can do all this type of stuff, but we can also send the case over so you can make the case. Once I turn this into a PDF, it becomes flat surface. I can't change anything about it. And then I can also get my drill protocol report, and this reminds us of what offset is and all that, which is nice. It gives us our lengths, but it doesn't give us what I sent you. So in this case, I developed this database, and anybody that works with us, I'm sure that Calvin, I'm happy to share the database with anybody. And this one's real easy. So all you do is you go in and you pick your implant, just like I did on that one. I tell it exactly which implant it is. I tell it what offset it is that I picked, and my drill report that I just showed you has that in it. And then it's just a matter of I tell it to print it, and there it is. Up to 6. Why did I design it with 6 and a lot of them only do 5? Because if I'm doing an all-on-4, more often than not, I've got 6 implants in it. And I don't want to have 2 pages if I don't have to, and I have plenty of room to get 6 of them on one sheet. So this one has to keep it. We're doing 6. If we're going to do 12, you just do 6 and 6 then. And so you just put it on here, and then you print out your second sheet and do the next 6 for you. But it's set on segments of 6. And this, we're in the process of developing it for multiple other implants too. But right now we have the Biomet, the ZIMMER, and the new ZIMMER Z3D kit that they have out. So we have it for all 3 of those. So it's a matter of the reason that one. There's for that. And this is also for their aesthetic, which they were a very long time coming to get. And I constantly like to remind them how it's an integral part of that. So no, we're in good speaking terms. Then, once I've done that, it's a matter of, we talked about it being modular, and this is real important. We get into Implant Studio, $6,000 before, $5,500 before I do my first case. And then about $1,000 a year, $850 to $1,000 a year for the annual license. Here, if I'm just getting started and I'm only doing one case, I'm not sure how many I'm going to do, we can do it on a per case basis. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is around $30 for the click. And you can see it takes one credit and then 0.2 credits for the crown. So it'd be $34 to do the guide and the temporary crowns. And the minute I click that, I don't have to now. I'll use some of a few credits that I have. When I do it, it turns all that into STLs. So once I have it into STLs, this is basically the same case. I did it. I had kind of fun. We got a different table here. I'm used to using a different viewer, so I'm not sure how to rotate it here or anything. But there's the guide. And this one, and this is kind of fun. This one I designed with what are called open face guide tubes. So as we get back to the bicuspids and molars, sometimes we have a hard time getting the drill in there because they don't open so wide. So some companies have developed guide tubes where it's open on the facial part of it. And there's still plenty of strength once it's into the guide, so that you can come in lab-like a little bit easier to get it in there. And that's what this one was with that. So I've got my got that, and then I've got my individual crowns ready to be done. So all this in STL, so I can do it on my own printer, my own mill, or I can send it over to Kelvin or to here, and we can mill it or print it for you.
And in narrow spaces, can we eliminate the guide tube and then just build it into the 3D guide?
Okay, I risk getting into a fight here.
Oh.
And you can do whatever you want. If you wanted me to do a plastic only without the guide tube, you're really talking about pilot drills.
Oh.
And if we do a pilot drill, I will tell you that I think it's a mistake. When we go this far and have everything so nice, that extra $10 for the guide tube in there is money well spent, because now it's fully guided. I've got metal against metal. When I take a metal drill through plastic, it's not going to be as reliable and safe. So I never will admit that that's guided surgery. I never will admit pilot drills are guided surgery. But some people just want the starting point. And yes, all of that's, we can do all that you're asking.
It's not that, sometimes you have a situation that there's not enough space between the teeth or the guide tooth. That's why I asked that. And what do you do in those cases?
In those cases, I will try to get the lab very hard to grind on the guide tooth.
Oh, okay.
So when I get that printout, it prints it as if everything's gonna go in okay. And if I do that one, I didn't show you here, there was another button I pushed to print the model. I would print the model too, because I gotta get it to go, don't I? So if I have the model, now I know where to grind on that guide tube.
Okay.
I already kind of know where to grind on the guide tube, because when I slip the guide tube in, there's gonna be metal showing because it's already ditched out the plastic because of the neighboring teeth. So it's remember, I'm showing you ones where they take whole facial out for facial. So for me to take, and it's rare that I'm gonna have it on both sides. It's gonna be on this, so if I want these two, I could have easily had it to where I didn't have enough room on the distal this one, the distal this one. So on both those, I'm gonna only be grinding away part of it. And so I would rather try that first. If not, then if we're uneasy about it, then I would probably revert from the regular guide tube and go to a pilot drill, because those guide tubes are much, much narrower. But understand, you're only getting your first drill in there that drills the length and the direction. From that point on, it's freehand.
Yeah.
And in the sense, it doesn't matter if you leave the guide on or take the guide off. Because if you're going with the pilot drill, you have to take the guide off, because you're not going to get the next diameter drill down there. But like I say, coming from a farming community, that first drill, once I have that down when I'm drilling for water in the well, the second drill has a tendency to follow the path, doesn't it, if I'm careful. So I'm not opposed to pilots. It's just that when, if we don't have the kits, then pilots we have to go. If we have the kits, why not go the full Monte? You know?
Right.
So you'll always have me fighting you on going fully guided so that it's slam dunk all the way, and it teaches the insecure to be more secure about placing implants. So for the first ones, if you've only done a couple under supervision and you're ready to do that next one by yourself, boy, being able to go fully guided all the way makes you much more confident on what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you.
Did this help you understand guided surgery a little bit? Does it make you feel like we're all ready to go do our first guide next week with my supervision? Because I have taught so many labs, and when they're done, they say, Craig, you didn't teach me anything I didn't already know. A week later, they come, Craig, will you please help us with the first guide? We really know how better we do, but it'd still be nice to have it. I have no problem with that. You know, I have done labs where they're often doing their own, and the first 3 guides they do, I've got clinicians that are often doing theirs by themselves after the course that I do. So in all things, our goal is technology only works if it's implemented. And we go to great lengths to make sure that we have successful and happy implementations. Thank you all very much.
Okay. So, we do have some lunch. The sandwiches are here, the drinks. You know, please feel free to go inside and grab what you like. And then just let me know when you guys are done, and I'll have the car service come back over here and bring you guys back to the Javits Center. Right? And then, we do have some questions in regards to the Oh, yeah.
So you're the one who's organized. Thank you.
I gave you a call and you were helping me out with the reshape libraries.
Uh-oh, what'd I do?
Oh, you did a good job. You worked great. I just want to say thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Call me anytime.
Absolutely.
You know, you have a hard time stopping me on this stuff. I love it all.
Yeah, Craig, not Craig, Tom gave me your number, and I called you up, and I knew I was speaking to some guy named Craig, and that was all it was. When I heard your voice, I'm like, it sounds familiar. I started talking about appreciate, I knew it was from you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.